Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the public forum on the Corvallis Pavement Rehabilitation Program. We'll be discussing the streets resurfacing projects on Western Boulevard, 35th Street and 11th Street. It's going to be presented by Corvallis Public Works staff and hosted by the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition and its Transportation Action Team. I am the co-host, Steve Starsvich. I'm the leader of the Transportation Action Team. And the other co-host is Annette Mills, who behind the scenes has set up the webinar and promoted this. Many thanks to her. Our presenters from Corvallis Public Works will be Josh Bjornstedt, the project manager for these 3 street resurfacing projects. And Josh Capps and Aaron Manley will be here also to answer questions at the end. Our Q&A moderator is Sarah Bronstein from OSU. She's the Sustainable Transportation Manager. And if you have questions or comments on these projects, any part of this design, please use the Q&A icon that you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom window. Anything that we don't get to, we don't have time to cover, will be copied and forwarded to Public Works staff. This forum is being recorded right now, and we will post it to the coalition website on the Transportation Action Team webpage, so that if you want to see it again or forward it to someone who might be interested, and for all those people who couldn't make it to a lunchtime forum, so that they will have a chance this weekend to watch it and ask questions, make comments. So the comments are due this coming Monday, July 1st at 8 a.m. Please direct your email comments to Josh Bjornstedt. You can see his email address here. And also past forums, Josh has gotten a lot of comments, so it would be helpful to him to include in the subject line of the email something like 35th and Western public questions, so to make sure that he doesn't miss it. And the most useful comments for Public Works are just, what is your direct experience using the street or intersection? And then identifying specific problems that are within this area, within the purview of Public Works. And without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Josh Bjornstedt, the project manager.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Let me share my screen with you guys and we'll get started. Okay, everybody see that? Is that a yes? Steve, can you give me a thumbs up? I'm good to go there.
Yeah, you might just want to put it in.
I'm seeing your notes.
Say that again.
Might want to put it in presenter mode so that you're.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, it's full page. There you go.
Bear with me here. Okay.
No,
how's that?
It's still.
Oh my goodness.
Try putting it in presentation mode before you share it. Nope.
My goodness, we had this off.
So unshare your screen and then put your presentation in presentation mode. And I'm not totally sure if this will work either.
What we were saying were your notes. We saw your notes.
Yeah, I think I was okay. Bear with me 1 minute. Let's see here. Go back to there.
Yay, perfect.
Okay, gosh darn, the two screens gets me every time. All right, my apologies. All right, well, thank you very much for having me. So this is this year's our street resurfacing project that we are currently in design on. We will not have a street resurfacing project per se this summer. This project, we've taken a little more time to look at some of the other aspects that could go along with a resurfacing project, other amenities that we could add as far as bikes and peds are concerned. So this one will actually be constructed 2025. And I'll talk more about timelines a little bit later. But anyway, yes, so this project will have 3 locations that will be resurfacing on 35th Street. And we'll go through the kind of the scope of that and on Western and on 11th Street. And then also a part of this project and a very major component of it is the waterline replacement that will occur in 35th Street and Western. And we'll touch base on that, what that's all about. So this year, the project is a street maintenance project with a waterline installation, but we're pretty excited about offering some of these other amenities that this audience has really voiced interest in the past. And part of that process this year around was to hire a consultant to come in. DKS consultants came in and helped us kind of identify some deficiencies that we have in all of our multimodal systems that are along these routes or on these streets. And they offered some suggestions for improvements, and staff's evaluated those. And what we'll see here is going forward is kind of what that looks like. Project-wise, schedule-wise, we're just completed up 60% design, and we're well on our way to getting this advertised and out to bid here by the end of the summer, so we can meet that timeline of getting this constructed for next year. So let's take a look on what that looks like. And why are you not moving for me? Okay, there we go. Okay, so project scope on the street rehabilitation. A lot of time rehabilitation is a couple of things. It could be a full recon or it could be a resurfacing. This project is going to be resurfacing, so we'll be grinding off a couple of inches of asphalt, paving that back with new. Part of the rehabilitation as well will be a installation of a speed hump on 11th Street. That is the final speed hump that will be installed as part of that neighborhood bikeway on 11th Street. We had a project last year where we added there must have been 8 or so speed humps that were installed there. This will be the last one that's within the scope of this project. So we held off on that last year because we knew this project was coming along. ADA sidewalk ramp construction, pretty straightforward. You've seen that around town the last number of years. Bicycle improvements, really we're looking at just getting buffered bike lanes on the streets where we've got width to do that, and we'll kind of go through that a little bit as we go. Pedestrian crossing improvements. We've got 3 locations we've identified for some additional enhancements. There's a refuge that we're going to add on 35th Street, just north of Sagebrush. We're looking at adding a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at Western and Dion, and the mid-block crossing that's there at Stadium Way, right adjacent to OSU. We're looking at adding some advanced signing there. We're also looking at adding street lighting, whether it's going to be new street lights or relocated. We're also looking at maybe changing out some bulbs and that sort of thing in those lights. And then, of course, the waterline project. Oops. Right. Well, why? Man, my apologies. Okay. So project locations. We are looking at on Western itself. The slide isn't quite showing it, but we will start our resurfacing back at the ODOT right of way of Highway 20 and extend Western all the way to 35th. Resurface then all the way north to Washington Way. OSU has some improvements currently happening at Washington Way that will kind of come in after those are all done and resurface the street there to kind of clean all that up. We have a little stub here on West Hills Road. That's really our water line extends through that location, so we'll make sure we capture all of those street improvements or the street resurfacing with that water line work there. We do include the entire intersection of 35th and Western with our resurfacing because, again, of the water line extending into that. The other location here on Western is between 26th and 15th, and that's pretty straightforward there. On 11th Street, we are, if you recall, a few years ago, we've resurfaced Van Buren, we've resurfaced Harrison. So that's kind of why you see a little bit of a gap in between what that darker line showing for 11th Street. And then there's some gaps here up at Fillmore and Taylor where we've got some existing concrete that we're going to retain, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Let's see, 35th and Western resurfacing. So now let's kind of get into the details of these different areas. Really, the blue here is showing what I've just mentioned of the grind limits. It will be a grind that really is contained within the curb and gutter that we have in those locations. So we're not really doing any improvements outside of curb and gutter unless we're talking about ADA ramps and that sort of thing. This section of Western that runs from West Hills to the highway, we've just got shoulders there, asphalt shoulders. So we will take the grind and resurfacing through those shoulders. Like I mentioned, we're looking at the entire intersection of Western and 35th. Included in this resurfacing, we will stripe back bike lanes and buffers in this kind of a squiggle legend here we're showing. So we will have bike lanes that extend to the highway limits through all of the section of Western, and then on 35th, the buffers will actually stop just south of the bridge that's there at Oak Creek. We just run out of width to get a buffer in north of the bridge. Bike lanes will still remain. We'll have bike lanes on all of 35th and all of Western, but the buffer itself will stop just short of. Not shown on here too. We'll have some markings that go in down here at West Hills Road. We'll have some green skip that goes through there where vehicles are turning right onto West Hills, and the bike lane continues on Western. So we'll get that added as well. Let's see. So in this same corridor, the green dots here are where we're proposing ADA improvements. So all of our ADA improvements are to bring the ramps up to standards for cross slopes, landings, and tactile or truncated domes. So those locations are gonna happen there. The pedestrian crossing refuge just north of Sagebrush. So with working on with our consultants on, we determined there's a high volume of peds that use this crossing with the retreat located to the west here. So we're gonna install a refuge there with advanced warning signs. There will not be an RRFB or a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at this time. We will set it up so that if in the future that becomes a need, we can do that. But with the refuge and the advanced signing, it's a vast improvement of what's there. And the fact too that it's such a straight sight distance, an RFB at this time just didn't seem as warranted. And then finally in the same corridor, we will be adding the rectangular flashing beacon down here at Dion. There was a couple of reasons behind that there. With the curve in Western, the the little additional width there in Western, it just seemed a little more warranted to perhaps give some more recognition or more um, um, visibility to pedestrians crossing at that location. And in addition to everything we've talked about, we're looking at upgrading our street lights along this area. So these little stars you're seeing here are either relocated or they are new street lights. Again, DKS was helped us kind of look at our lighting levels at a lot of our crossings, and we found that a lot of our street lights are in this area were located kind of right at the corners, and it's good for vertical illumination, but we really cast a shadow on users at those on PEDs at those locations for horizontally. So by pulling some of those lights back from the intersection, you get that horizontal illumination that'll really help uh, with visibility of pedestrians at those crossings. So we're excited about that. And let's see, in addition, I guess some of these locations are treed. So we'll have to take a look at either some trimming of the vegetation. We'll start with that. Removal of trees is a possibility, but I think for the most part, just with some vegetative trimming, we can make the illumination better there. So that is 35th and Western, or yep, 35th and Western. The other part of Western is from 26th to 15th. And pretty straightforward there. It's a grind inlay. I am showing this may change here. I was originally showing this is the turn lane from 26th into Western, or Western into 26th. That asphalt was rather in pretty good condition. We also had some loops in that location that we were trying to avoid. You start getting into that stuff, we were upwards of another $100,000 or so. So, we try to do our best to, if we're in good condition, we can not affect some of those costs, the project with those costs, we'll do that. But it turns out we may be impacting loops no matter what. So this may be a resurfacing all the way to 26th. We're still kind of evaluating that. As far as bike lanes go, bike lanes will be on Western, but the buffer itself, we start to run out of room in width by the time of that turn lane, the right turn lane, and we've added the left turn lane. So bike lane buffers will extend from the start of this turn up to the western side of that existing mid-block crossing that's there. We've got sufficient width to provide a 1-foot buffer. It's not the 2-foot that we like to get. The interesting thing about this section of Western is we have a wide gutter pan there, which is 6 feet wide. If we go any less than that, we start ending up with a seam either in the bike lane or in the travel lane, which if we can, we'd like to get that buffer in the stripe at the seam of that gutter pan in the street itself. So we will end up with a 6-foot wide bike lane and a 1-foot buffer there. Typical 2-inch grinding, 2-inch paving for this section. In this same section, again, our ADA ramps are the green dots. So we are looking at improving the 2 ramps there at Stadium Way and the 2 ramps here at 15th that are shown. This corner of 15th, the northwest corner there, we are going to actually modify. We're going to enlarge that radius to help our transit make that turn a little easier. Currently now we hold back traffic stop to make a left onto 15th just to help with the buses turning, which has helped, but we have the opportunity to make that a little easier turn for buses by widening that. So we'll end up rebuilding that ADA ramp that's there. Let's see, we do not do anything with the mid-block crossing that's currently there, just west of 16th. We do add the lighting as shown on here. Again, I think for the most part, there is lighting there, but we're relocating it again to help with more of that horizontal illumination on pedestrians. This mid-block crossing here at Stadium Way is a fairly utilized crossing. It is kind of the access for the softball field and the soccer field over there, and at times it can be traveled pretty heavily. So what we're going to do there is some advanced signing. We'll actually stripe a crosswalk on Western. Currently is no crosswalk striping there. So again, with that added enhancement, we're hoping that will help bring awareness to people crossing in that location. Oh, let's see. So now 11th Street. We are looking at, like I mentioned, kind of resurfacing in between what we've done already there. So again, Van Buren and Harrison was recently done. All the ADAs are done at the corners. And this other area we're skipping out here is existing concrete that's down, which is in very, very good condition. We are going to leave it as concrete, and we will pave asphalt up to the limits that are there. It's quite it's a good, and the material that's down is very in very good condition, and just didn't seem to make sense to tear that out just to put asphalt back in there. The location at Polk and Tyler, my next slide will show some ADA ramps being done at these locations. That's going to be a more extensive full depth reconstruction. We've got some drainage patterns in those locations that lead more to a corner drain, and we want to push those drains to the outsides of our ramps. So there'll be a little bit of reconstruction work happening in those two locations. Let's see. And then on 11th, oh, I should go back. I didn't mention the speed, and this is the speed hump location that we'll be adding there at Fillmore and between Fillmore and Taylor. And this is the last of, I think it was about 8 or 9 that we'd put in. So this will either be 10 or 9 or 10, something along those lines. That construction is going to be similar to what we did last year, where it'll be a hump going in on top of the finished asphalt street surface. And then it'll have some striping on it and that sort of thing, similar to what we have out there now. Let's see. So I mentioned the ADAs. Those will all get done at all 4 corners of Polk and Tyler. And then once we're all said and done with paving, the final striping here on 11th Street will include these shared lane markings, or sharrows, as we called them in the past. We'll have a kind of be a start and stop at each location. So this exhibit isn't really showing what we'd have, just that there will be on each of these segments. What we'll end up with is at the start of every intersection, there will be a share or a shared lane marking here, and then there'd be one here, and that would just replicate as we go each block. Let's see. The final thing I wanted to kind of talk about here would be the waterline project. It's a major project. I know maybe a little off topic of what this group's here for, but it's really driving a lot of what we're doing as far as our resurfacing limits go. So you can see here, we will make our tie-in connection on West Hills, turn at 35th, and we will tie into the line that actually OSU just recently reconstructed on Washington Way. They replaced the 20-inch water line that ran east-west here, and now we will be tying into that. So our water line's looking, we're getting a lot of that older line replaced. This will be an interesting end to the waterline project. We will cross under Oak Creek. We will cross under the railroad with some boring. So those will be a neat aspect to the project. And then we've got tie-ins and that sort of thing along the way. Just to quickly mention, on the south side of Western, we'd have some meters that will be relocated more towards the street. They're kind of back, not really accessible, behind some bushes, and some of them are perched on side slopes and that sort of thing. So we'll take care of that. Take care of that there as well. So That's kind of the scope of everything visually. Project timelines, like I'd mentioned, we're getting through design. The target is to be completed by mid-August. Be advertising for bids here end of August, first part of September. Construction is really going to happen in two parts. The water line would be going first, of course, anything underground. We're hoping to get started on that this coming winter, maybe a November, December start. And then streets would really start in spring of 25 and run through the summer and be completed. Well, it'd be great to be completed before OSU's back in session. I put fall on there. More likely it's we'll have some cleanup and that sort of thing into the first part of fall. But I think by mid to late September, we're hoping to have everything wrapped up. I should mention that with the waterline construction in particular, the area is going to be you'll see some detours and changes in traffic patterns for a decent amount of time. So just be aware of the work that's happening, and the need to have that right of way to be able to put that water line in and that sort of thing. So there'll certainly be some changes there, and we'll have some bulletins and notices that go out alerting the public to the changes that are coming. So that kind of wraps up the gist of the project. I guess now we're kind of ready for any questions you might have about what you have read, if you had this ahead of time, or what you've heard today.
Okay, thanks so much, Josh. My name's Sarah Bronstein. I'll be moderating the Q&A for any questions that folks have. In addition to Josh, we also have another Josh Capps with us, and Aaron Manley as well, if there's some need for additional contextual information. And just as a reminder, if you have questions, please do enter those into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll be answering them from there. And at the end of this, we'll put back up the contact information for Josh so that if you think of questions later, you can always send them to him as part of the open comment period for these projects. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. This is an intimate little group. We have a small group of folks here with us today. So there may not be as many questions, but we'll see what we get. So one of the questions that we got was just about project scope. And I want to make sure that that we're all clear on the scope of the projects. Was there a change in the scope to the Western Blvd project? There was a question about whether or not that project would go all the way to Philomath Boulevard, or if it ends at West Hills. Can you clarify?
As far as the scope goes, there was a change. As far as the limits go, I think those have always been the same. We will go to Philomath Boulevard or Highway 2034 there. It was originally scoped in the CIP as a reconstruction, a full depth dig out. But we know that there's studies going on between Benton County and the city for the West Hills and Western intersection that could entail a roundabout or some improvements there. And really, rather than sinking a bunch of costs into a recon that could be changed with that, we elected to revise that scope in the CIP to include that portion as just a resurfacing project. So.
Thank you. I think that gets to another question that someone had about the roundabout. So the resurfacing is being timed such that it won't need to be redone as part of that roundabout. Is that right?
Yeah, there will be some overlap limits that I would assume this roundabout would need to reconstruct. But yes, we're trying to limit the amount of costs we're putting into improving the infrastructure that could change with whatever the study from that roundabout study produces. So
got it. Yeah. One other question that that I actually also shared. You mentioned the really wide gutter pans on Western. Are the repaving projects where there's a wide gutter pan, is that gutter pan being kept in place? And for any of these projects, will the grind and inlay go all the way out to the curbs? So basically, will the bike lanes be part of the repaving project?
We will not. Yeah. So any curb and gutter that's there presently, we will not be removing, whether we're tearing it out and rebuilding it, or we're not grinding through it. So those are our limits to match into. Trying to think, let's see. So the portion from Western from West Hills to the highway, that will all be new pavement, which will then have bike lanes there. I don't believe we have bike lanes there at this point. So that will be a new asphalt surface. And then on 35th Street, where we've got just standard curb and gutter width of a couple of feet, whatever remainder of that, let's see, so about 3 feet of new pavement there will be a new asphalt surface within a bike lane.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple questions coming in about the change in the curve radius that you described on Western and 15th, I believe.
Mhm.
And I'm curious about if you can address some concerns that folks have on what that will do for pedestrian crossings at that location. If it'll make it more difficult for pedestrians to be seen by vehicles as they're making that crossing.
I think, yeah, the changes we are making are not going to, I don't think, impact visibility of pedestrians at that crossing. We're changing it ever so. I mean, it's not like we're going from a 5-foot radius to a 30-foot radius. It's a little more subtle than that, but it's enough that it will help transit. But it's something we can take a look at for sure, as far as resulting impact to a crossing, the users at that crossing. But at this time, I just don't think it's going to change that radically to impact that. And the one thing we're doing there too is we are adding some street lighting there that I think will really help bring the visibility onto the person crossing versus kind of maybe a more shadowed look that they have there now with where the lights are at.
Yeah, while we're on the topic of street lighting, there was a question about the light heads themselves. Can you talk a little bit about if there's going to be any upgrades made to the lights in terms of shielding or brightness and that kind of thing while they're being moved?
Yeah, I can speak to the shield. Lighting isn't necessarily my forte. There's someone else is kind of handling that side of it, but I can say that we are looking at the wattage that we have there. It's more in line with what our standard is. Some of those are some older lights and locations. Shielding is a part of that light installation, so that's certainly an aspect that we'll put into this project. But as far as the details and the specifics, I could maybe that's something I could provide a more detailed response to in a response to the questions.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and you'll be able to see a roundup of all these questions that were provided afterwards if you want to
Perfect.
look more in detail at anything. Let's see. There was a question about speeds on 35th. I know there's a lot of concern about particularly folks crossing 35th, pedestrians and bicyclists. And can you talk a little bit about if any traffic calming elements were considered as part of the project and what might be an appropriate approach to that location?
Yeah, we're not proposing any changes to the speed limits that are currently on these segments of street. as far as traffic calming, when we get to our arterials and collectors like we have, the traffic calming is not a typical approach. I'm hopeful that with getting pedestrians more visible with the lighting and a D on there, especially, for putting in that rectangular flashing beacon, it's alerting drivers to people in those crossing locations. But as far as the existing posted speeds and along those lines, there's no plan to change any of that at this time.
Yeah, I think the question in particular was about 35th. And I know that there's a lot of pedestrians crossing at the location where you're going to be adding a refuge. And so I have actually heard some people refer to, raised refuges as a form of traffic calming, in that vehicles see sort of a narrowing of their travel path. And so I don't know if you would agree that that is in its own way kind of a within the design speeds of the current speed limit, its own sort of form of traffic calming.
It would be anytime you put I don't want to call it an obstruction, but it's a device within the street, right? It's a raised crosswalk, or a raised refuge, I should say. And then two, I think just having buffered markings is another tightening of that travel lane. So remember, in I didn't mention this, but to get some of these buffers in, we are reducing lane widths for vehicles. So that in itself is kind of should have an effect of slowing traffic down some. We're going to our minimums on some of our travel lane widths for arterials and collectors, where we had much wider lanes, especially on Western near as you approach 35th Street. Those were, a single lane each direction with a median. They were quite wide, so we've been able to take some of that width and use it as a buffer for the bike lanes, and taking that away from the vehicles.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As someone that works on 35th myself, I will be using those buffered bike lanes quite often. So I recognize the improvements that are being made there. I want to shift our focus over to 11th Street. We had a couple of questions about the neighborhood bikeway and the improvements that you're making there. For starters, I think there's some questions just about the different elements that are sort of part of the package of a neighborhood bikeway, or that are in our design guide as an option. So there were some questions about like what are some possible treatments that could be implemented at Van Buren and Harrison for sort of mitigating those crossings, from our design guide, what's possible, whether it's skip stripe, green paint, or signage. And then there were also some voices of skepticism about sharrows and what they accomplish. And so if you want to address either of those, I'll sort of give them to you at the same time.
Okay, Josh, I'm going to put you on the spot if you're okay addressing that along the lines of the neighborhood bikeway.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Hopefully, everyone can hear me. I can definitely address the topic of sharrows. So if for those of you who referenced the neighborhood bikeway standards, we've got some information in there about shared lane markings, and how we reference those is, of course, they remind people driving to watch for bicyclists. Yes, since these are local streets, there's no paint, there's no lines, but we also mostly use them for guidance and to also mark the junction for 2 or more bikeways, and also to alert cyclists for upcoming decisions, turns, destinations, that kind of thing. So they're here for guidance. That's mainly a big reason why you have shared lane markings there. They also help confirm for bicyclists that they're on the proper route. They give that visual indicator. Yeah, so that's it's a little different than, you know, using them in a different context. I understand that there's a lot going on with shared lane markings right now, and what their purpose was in the beginning, what they've evolved to now. But this is how we're using them, and it's backed up in our bikeway standards. So make sure to take a read there.
Josh, do you want to address the question regarding what types of crossing treatments are possible from the standards for our crossings at Van Buren and Harrison?
I have, I should probably pull that up, but I believe what we have there are traditional, our continental standard or our continental markings, along with signage. And currently, that's what we've got for our, that's what we've got in our plans. So at this point, there's nothing else that we're planning at the moment. Doesn't mean that it's not being considered for the future, but that's what we have for right now.
Do we have tabletop intersections or raised crosswalks in our standards right now as an option?
For
crossings of neighborhood bikeways at intersections with collectors and arterials more broadly.
Right. Sure. Yeah, that is a tool in the toolkit. I would probably defer that to Josh and Aaron in terms of what something like that would take. It is not in our current plans on the neighborhood bikeway. That's I believe I'll let them speak to that. What that means in terms of an entire dig out and replacement for that crossing. I don't know if that's in their budget scope. Like I said, it's not in our plans currently for the 11th Street Bikeway. We're focusing really tightly on Tyler right now.
So
but yes, it is a tool in the toolkit.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily have like a standard for, like, we have all of our other standard drawings for aspects of what we put in around the city. We don't have a tabletop standard. And so it's and I think it would take more of a rebuild at intersections. With respect to the neighborhood bikeway on 11th Street, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that is shown in that plan for that treatment. So, you know, that sounds like more of it's probably a future project that would need to be considered and vetted through the public CIP process. It's probably one of those projects that, you know, in the future, maybe it does become its own CIP and we get it in and implement it that way.
Yeah, there's always considerations in terms of budgets and how far you want to try and make your money go versus going all in on bigger infrastructure and specific locations. So I appreciate those balances. One more neighborhood bikeway question, and that's about speed hump design. This person is asking about the way our speed humps are currently designed, which is that they're quite wide. They take up the full width of the street, so a vehicle mounts them with both wheels, and they're asking if there's any consideration been made of narrower or cutout models that would allow cyclists to run right through them via a cutout and would still impact at least one wheel of a vehicle.
Right. Yeah, you know, we have been asked this question quite a few different times, starting with 11th Street when we first put speed humps in. But mostly it's been through either individual emails or in person, and not usually in a public forum. So yeah, it's good to bring that up. But we did decide to address that topic fully, and we did put something in our neighborhood bikeway FAQ. I don't know if I can paste the page for the neighborhood bikeways. Maybe somebody out there can do it, or one of the moderators. But we did put that in our FAQ, and why we don't cut channels into our speed humps. So I don't want to waste or take away any valuable time from this Q&A, and make this more about neighborhood bikeways than it is about the actual project for the resurfacing. So I'd ask for you to all take a read on the answer in the FAQ to get more information.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Josh.
Sure.
So here, this is sort of an ADA question and sort of a neighborhood bikeway question. And I'll leave it to you two to determine which Josh will answer it. This is a question about when you choose to bump out your curb ramps. There's several curb ramps that are being replaced as part of this project, and some of them are being replaced on neighborhood streets along the neighborhood bikeway. And so the question is, in those contexts where you don't have, you know, a major arterial crossing, but you do have space for a bump out because of the parking lane on a neighborhood street, when might the city consider doing a curb reconstruction where you're daylighting the pedestrian there?
Well, let me take a first stab with Josh. You can supplement my answer if you want. I think that is the main criteria that we focus on is, you know, what are the volumes, what are the traffic volumes in the streets we're working on, right? So right now we're looking at 11th and Polk and Tyler. We did talk about bulb outs internally and decided against, just because of you know, the low volumes of traffic that we do see there. I don't know, Josh, was there anything more behind active transportation's look and interpretation of those locations for this project?
No. And you're talking about Polk, or you're talking about which?
Yeah, 11th and Polk and 11th and Tyler.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't really have much to add to what you've already said.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll register at least that there's interest from the community in that type of design here. And so if those are features that are, you know, not necessarily at significant additional cost, it sounds like that's something folks are interested in seeing where there's an opportunity. And like I said, again, we'll share the original context of comments for you to see later. I think there's still some other questions about crossing treatments at busier intersections, particularly if green paint skip striping is an option for where neighborhood bikeways are crossing those locations. I know that's a design treatment that's used fairly frequently in Portland with similar types of crossings of their bikeway network.
Well, I'll speak to you know, anytime we're talking markings and striping, that those are very easily implemented. So engineering, let's just say at this point, we'll get together with active transportation, Josh's group, and we can take a look at that. You know, I think Josh has worked with, you know, trying to establish consistency around town too, and that needs to be considered. And if we do a certain treatment and it's a look for a neighborhood bikeway, do we then want to make those improvements around the city? So it's yes, we're talking about this one location, but it's maybe a bigger discussion. How are we setting ourselves up with all the other locations that we have?
Great. Here's a question that's come in, taking us back to 35th. So at 35th and Sagebrush, which is where the new crossing will go in. Yeah, thanks for getting us back to that context there. Perfect. So there was a question about whether that crossing would be designed to accommodate bicyclists. That connection there is critical just because it will be a primary connection for cyclists to get to the cycle track north on Washington Way. And there's also, while it isn't signed as such, there's effectively a multi-use path along the side of 35th there that connects currently to the multi-use path on the south side of Washington Way.
Yeah, we can
address that.
Yep, we can certainly do that. We're still in the process of designing that. You know, I think a wide throat to accommodate the bike use would be good. I think we're already calling out about 10 feet throat on that thing. But I know there's an element of that too to get the on-street bicyclists positioned so that they can cross perpendicularly. And we did a little bit of that on Circle last year at Crystal Lake or Jack London. I think we'll work with Josh a little bit. I think there's maybe a few aspects of that we can improve this go around. So yes, we will certainly look at being able to accommodate bicyclists at that crossing as well.
Great, thank you. Here's a more general question. I know you'd mentioned that you started off all of this work by engaging a consultant and doing some evaluation. Presumably there was some data collection that was part of that process. So this question is about, asking what data was collected and sort of went into the initial decision making, and is that data that can be shared?
Yeah, let's see. So there was a DKS came in, and this was kind of headed by transportation, did a good job of getting them on board. And we had a site visit initially to kind of talk about scope of what they'd be looking at. So we focused just kind of on these corridors that were part or coincident to the resurfacing project, because that was our interest. And then they believe went out a second time and then did it was mostly observations. I don't know that there's any official ped counts or vehicle counts that were taken. I can double check on that, but mostly it was an observational thing. How are peds interfacing with vehicles and bicycles? How are bicycles interfacing with vehicles? A lot of observational stuff, information was taken, and then from that, kind of they came to us with some suggestions of what we could improve. Again, along the lines of not going way off track and looking at improvements that were outside of what we could do with the project, like a cycle track or something like that. They kind of refined their comments and suggestions to, hey, yeah, you could do this with this resurfacing project in this area type thing. And I should mention too, part of that was the lighting analysis. They did take some readings and that sort of thing to understand what the current lighting levels were, and then came up with a lighting plan to help with lighting at all of these different locations. As far as it being available for public consumption, I don't know we're at that point yet as far as anything formally being put together. So it is information that we kind of use kind of a collaborative effort with them in helping us define our improvements for this project.
Great. So there's not necessarily a formal written report that would be available publicly.
Yeah, not this time. There's not.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that though. Here's another sort of contextual question, and it sort of relates to timing of other projects. I had sort of missed it earlier, so I'm going back through. So there's some planned work that the state is going to be doing along Fulhamouth Boulevard at the intersections of 35th and 53rd. Will this project timing correlate to that project timing? Is there any coordination that's happening between you and the state?
There's no coordination at this point. I have heard of that work occurring. I don't, since we're looking at 25, I'm not sure if they're looking more at the summer or what their timing is. Since we will be, there'll be detours in place for the work we do here, and we will be utilizing the highway for some of those detour routes. that will be something I'll coordinate with them and make sure we're not overlap. If we can avoid overlap, that makes it difficult to get around. We'll try to avoid that. But I need to touch base with them more on kind of what their refined schedule looks like.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we're just about at time, and I think I've gotten through most of the questions here. So I want to let Steve step in with any last minute information. And thank you all again for attending and for the great questions. One of the things I appreciate most about this community is that we have an informed and engaged public that cares deeply about our public infrastructure. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. It was a smaller group of attendees, but lots of questions, great questions. And Sarah, you did an awesome job going through them. At the same time, I have highlighted and copied and pasted them into a document. So I will be arranging all of these and sending them to Josh Bjornstedt. So he can answer any questions or subject matter that didn't get answered. And I just want to remind everyone that the comments are due this Monday at 8 a.m. So we have the weekend to send in any comments. And I just realized that there is also a setting in the Q&A where everyone can see the questions being asked. The next public forum, now that I'm aware of it, I will definitely set that so everybody can see the questions rolling in so they don't have ask redundant questions, and they can also have follow-up questions to something that sparks something in their mind from a question they see submitted. So thank you everyone so much for attending, and thank you very much to Corvallis Public Works for this presentation. Thank you, Josh Bjornstedt, for the presentation, and Josh Capps and Aaron Manley for attending and answering some questions. And we really appreciate you being open to questions and comments. So with that, it concludes our webinar. And thanks again for coming. Take care.